Hey, welcome to another episode of The Wireless Way. I'm your host, Chris Whitaker. And man, yeah, as always, so grateful that you have taken some time to check out this episode. And yeah, we just are coming over 100 episodes, 57 countries. So I'm very grateful for all of you out there. My goal, as always, is to add some motivation, some inspiration, and education. We're going to hit on all of those today. You're going to see why Jared Gleaton is with us. He's my guest. Grateful for his time. And before I bring him on, as always, a little bit about him. He's a nationally certified school psychologist. So he's a smart guy and he loves people. He's a beloved brother, devoted son, nephew, and proud doggy dad, and known for captivating food reviews and exploration of the culinary world. Yes, all of you have to eat. This is one topic you should be very passionate about. You all are eating food, and we're going to talk about that today. Jared invites readers on a tantalizing journey through diverse food landscapes, where each review becomes a portal into the intricate tapestry of culinary delights where psychology and food intersect. That's where Jared got me. I love the idea of our senses. We're going to talk about that and how psychology just impacts our whole life. And it's something as important as food. A little more about Jared. With a bachelor's degree in psychology from the University of Central Oklahoma, a master of arts in school psychology from the University of Central Oklahoma, and a master of arts in educational leadership from East Central University, Jared combines his academic background with his passion for food to offer unique insights into the intersection of psychology and I'm going to mess this word up. Gastronomy? Is that right,
Yeah,
Jared?
so yes, it is. In the book, I call it foodology because foodology is a little less intimidating. It also brings it down. It's just the study of food in all aspects.
Excellent. We're going to know more about that. And there's so much more to know about Jared. And check the show notes for his YouTube channel, his website, where to see his reviews. So much more. I'll have the rest of his bio in the show notes. So check that out. Man, Jared, thanks for being patient with me. And you were very flexible and kind in scheduling this interview today. So thanks for that.
Hey, you're welcome. Thank you so much for having me, Chris. I appreciate it.
Man, you're doing us a favor. I can tell. Like I said, I love this topic. I love what you're doing. I think it's just so important that everyone knows about this. As always, is my first question. We have your bio. You have a book out. We'll talk about that in a moment. But before we get to that, tell me more about what's not in the bio. How did you get here?
So how I got here is just again, it's a long journey of developing food relationships at an early age and bonding with my father. And how I got here was eventually I had lost my father in tragedy in 2016. And then shortly after I lost my father, I had ballooned up to about 376 pounds. And so in 1 year, I lost 176 pounds. And through that, I developed a deeper appreciation, understanding, and love for food. And through that, it just spiraled into I explored fine dining, and I realized a lot of the reviews and the critiques of food didn't talk much about what is actually going on in atmosphere, service, and food within the industry. It was talking about the culture, it was talking about the chef, but it really didn't get much into the food. It was a great story, but what was lost in translation was a true critique of the food. So that's what sort of started me really analyzing the food from that psychologist background. But then I also decided there are some strong emotions that are elicited from each bite of food. And I started to talk about that. And then through that, I realized I had been conditioned to be in a box for food. And it was time to break out of that box.
That's fascinating. It's almost even beyond the senses for you. Going back to the
Mhm.
psychology of it, and as you're talking and as looking over and reviewing your book and your material and your website, again, I share with you pre-show that first half of my life, I felt like I just ate to survive. I
Mhm.
didn't really I didn't value a full fine dining experience. You know,
Sure.
in fact, I didn't have a ton of money as a kid growing up, right?
Yeah.
Kind of raised in a very moderate, low middle income kind of household. So fine dining was not on the it was not on the
Mhm.
roadmap. But yeah, and sharing with you that my wife's family is they're huge foodies, and there's so many and it's so many family funny stories are always around the dinner table. There's so
Yes.
much. I mean, you're going back there. That's why everything you're saying is just wow. I've never really thought about that food that way. So tell us
Yeah.
more about that. Yeah, tell us more about that. What motivated you to write this book, and how did you get from that story and finish your story out for me, please?
Oh, absolutely. So a lot of my analysis uses the five senses because a lot of times we go to a restaurant and don't think too much of it, that it all plays a factor in forming our food choices. Smell, touch, taste, hearing, and seeing, they all play a role in your food choices from an early age. And it's funny that you said food as cost. We have this association where good food costs money or healthy food costs money. And that is designed and engineered by corporations at an early age. At an early age, all the candy, all the junk food that is fairly cheap, that is super sweet, that appeals to certain biological mechanisms, and or super salty or super fatty is fed to us. And so we get this narrative that's built up where we implicitly, with our bias, grab the things that we're so used to. It forms a pattern. And one thing about humans is it's hard for us to break our patterns, especially if we don't recognize them. If what's working for us as humans is working, or we don't feel a problem with that, we're just in that narrow view. And so using the five senses, you're able to really touch in and be more aware of the choices that you're making. But what I talk about in my book is I discuss the five senses, how they play in food, because the whole point is once you understand how seeing can influence your taste and your smell influences taste and your taste can influence your smell and your hearing, it all plays a role. You can actually start to really break down each bite of food. And then you can take those bites of food and bring it home. For example, if you have a pack of Barilla noodles that are just dried noodles and they're not considered fine dining, but they're $1.99. If you get a stick of butter, take two tablespoons of butter, you take some of that Kraft Parmesan cheese. I'm not saying it's great. And then you take some pasta water, you stir that together. You have actual Alfredo from just like Northern Italy, and you add a head of broccoli for 99 cents. You're not using that whole stick of butter. You're not using that whole thing of Kraft. Your meal costs less than $3 right there. And it's the most authentic thing you'll have because Olive Garden certainly isn't.
That's true. And that's, I was having a conversation recently too around Cheerios. Growing up, Cheerios, my mom would not let us have anything with sugar. So once in a while, my grandmother might sneak us a box of Frosted Flakes, but it was either Team Flakes or Cheerios. But back then, there were 3 or 4 ingredients. Now you go look, and I know we're getting off topic, but it's still food. There's so many more ingredients, or even restaurant, corporate food. I can imagine there's a lot more preservatives and chemicals in there that wouldn't be if it was authentically, organically made. Are as a food guy yourself? I mean, would you call yourself? Are you very health conscious? Do you try to eat clean and raw? Or are you just, hey, let's go for it, man? Whatever's on the menu, I feel like eating.
So it depends. If I'm home, I'm more clean. If I'm out, then I'm going to, because I don't even look at the menu anymore whenever I go out. I've tried to work on and build my horizons beyond what I think I like and what I think I don't like. And so when I go out, I usually want to know the essence. And whenever I'm reviewing and critiquing restaurants, I want to know the essence of the restaurant. And so I just tell them, bring me a couple appetizers, give me a couple entrees, and bring me a couple desserts. And so we can get the essence of the restaurant. It's on the restaurant to provide me with the experience. And then I just critique what they bring me.
So this is something you do. Looking at your website, you are almost a food reviewer for hire in a sense, right? Is that the critiquing? Or
I have had a few restaurants reach out to me, and some of them have covered my meal. In the end, I still give them the score that they earn, and that integrity is very important to me. This is mostly self-funded. I like food, and I like bringing food to people and expanding people's minds and giving a different perspective. And this isn't necessarily a day job. It's a hobby and a passion that I love that I can speak to. And so I think being honest, no matter what, even if a restaurant's paying me $500 to come in, which none of them has, you're still going to get the same thing because I'm going to give you my honest opinion of what is going on based on my experiences in a respectful way as an intent to be constructive criticism, whether it's good or bad, whether you think the reader thinks it's good or bad.
And you mentioned you had a YouTube channel, and I didn't mention this to you in our pre-show, but it made me think about the One Bite Pizza review with a Dave Portnoy, I think it is.
Yeah,
he does those One Bite Pizza reviews, and I think he started that out as just his having fun with pizza, but now it's turned into $1 million business. If you watch him now, he talks about the jeans he's wearing, and he name drops 2 or 3 other products before he even gets to the pizza, but they're still entertaining. I like them, and it helps me appreciate cheese pizza. I always thought cheese pizza was boring.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but did you ever see that in your future?
It just depends on where it goes. The YouTube channel is ultimately in its infancy. I got a lot of inspiration from Alexander the Guest, who is a fine dining overseas. He's European. He owns a Michelin restaurant. I unfortunately don't have his bankroll to do what he does. But
Yeah.
I see several Americans, UA Eats and some others that review fine dining. And what I really noticed is they're not really critiquing the food. They're just giving their personal opinions of what they like and what they don't like, what they think they did good, and what they think the restaurant doesn't do good. And so it doesn't really get it to a more of an evaluation or a scientific approach to it. And which is fine. But the days of, like I said, that type of review is very popular because it gets clicks, it gets audience. This was, it wasn't very good. Oh, the service was horrible. That doesn't tell us why the service was horrible. You just think it's horrible. If I've never, in my reviews, I try and remove, and even in the YouTube say, this is good, this is bad. I might give an emotional response, but I always critique first what the flavors are, where it is on the tongue. For example, I just got back from a steakhouse, and each bite of steak was delicious with the beginning notes of crispy char that went into middle notes of creamy, tangy béarnaise and sweet crab, and that transitioned back to succulent end notes of beef that coated the mouth and made the toes curl. So describing that, yes, I added immersion, but could you sit there? Did you think of beef when I was describing that? You weren't?
It made me want to go find a good steakhouse.
Yeah, but so that's the thing is I'm able to describe, okay, so now there was crab in there and it was sweet on the tongue and the béarnaise was a little tangy. So even if you're not, you can join me on these experiences, especially if it's fine dining experiences that places you might not otherwise go to. Maybe you will.
It's definitely, I was sharing with you, my brother-in-law would, even when any of my kids or my wife and our family text chat, whenever like a new restaurant comes to town, they always like, oh my God, that was fire. It was off the chart. Those are passionate, emotional critiques or reviews, but to take it a step further and take you on a journey like you just did, that's a skill. I don't know if everyone has that ability, but I think everyone can appreciate it, right? Is that
yes.
Yeah.
And I hope so, but I haven't really seen anyone else take it in the food industry at the moment. I want to bring that. I want to broaden people's horizons. Maybe somebody won't try an oyster because they have a preconceived notion of what an oyster is, but if they hear me describe it, it's not necessarily slimy, icky what they would think.
No, that's so true. I liked you did an exercise with me, and we did our pre-show about asking me why I would like something or don't like something, and then you started asking questions. You're like, "What if it's better than you expect?" What and you think about oysters, for example. I mean, there's oyster houses. I live in the South. You go to South Florida or anywhere along the coast, there's oyster houses everywhere. So clearly, they must be pretty good. And it's not like if they were terrible, they wouldn't be everywhere. For people that are like, I've never eat oyster. Why not? I mean, you might be missing out on something and how they're prepared and the size and what part of the ocean or what bay they come from can matter. My wife and I actually, she just recently converted over to raw oysters. And I've always been, I'll eat them. But again, case in point, when I was a young man, we had a bad batch of oysters and I got like sick. It was like, it took me years to even want to even look at an oyster just because it was a bad batch. Time to find out. A lesson learned there. But now I love them again. I love them grilled, char grilled, raw, baked, which I always like to have that joke around. Who was the first human that cracked open an oyster and go, oh, I think I'll eat that?
Oh, absolutely.
It doesn't look that appetizing at first glance.
No, it doesn't look that appetizing, but you just hit on the whole essence is you had this experience and this experience shaped you for this one singular food that is so much more in depth and goes beyond that one singular experience. But that's an implicit response. It's just the idea of oysters immediately, no. And so finding the strength to be vulnerable again and to try the oyster and work through that bias. Just imagine if you found that strength just through food. And it's asking a lot for some people to just go into a restaurant and put that much thought into it. But what if you found that strength, you tried that oyster, you realized how wonderful it is, you don't get sick? You could apply that strength that you found to other aspects of your life and just imagine the growth. And starts with an oyster.
See, that's deep and beautiful right there, because you're right. Once you develop that process in your mind and your brain and you can overcome that same skill set, that same muscle memory, it can be applied to other things in your life. So that's very insightful as well.
Yes. And that's what I really like to talk about. And that's the message that goes beyond the book. And even what's not in my bio, what's beyond the book is we all have these tendencies. And I think I talked to you about this a little bit before. And that was the idea of you go into a restaurant that you love all your life and you order one or two things off the menu. And there's probably more than one or two things off the menu. And so if you can find the strength to get past what we're comfortable with, what we know is good, what's worth it for value, and just explore a little bit, you could find the next greatest thing on the menu, a new flavor you never thought was possible that touches your palate. And you're like, oh my God, where have you been the last 20 years of my life, last 5 years of my life? This has never, I've discovered something new. How powerful is that discovery of a new flavor, taste that you didn't even know existed because you are safe in your comfort zone? Steak every time.
Yeah, man. That reminds me of that song, Free Your Mind.
Yes,
Follow.
exactly.
I think I got that. Foodies. We talked a little bit about that.
Hmm?
Fair to say you're a foodie
I would consider myself a foodie.
and said, I'm a new foodie, but most of
Hmm.
my half of my life, I would not call myself a foodie because, again, I just thought eating. Of course, I was in the Army for the 10 years from 18 to 28. I was in the Army. And the Army is not known for fine culinary dining, although
Sure.
there are, and they call them mess halls, and they would have contests. They would have competitions on military bases. They would have contests to help the folks that work in the mess halls, the cooks and all, to have some pride in their work. Of course, they had pride in their work, and I think it's come a long way. I've been out for 25 years, and I'm hearing, depending on which base, the Air Force bases always have the best. The
Mhm.
Marines and the Army, not so much. The Navy, I hear, is pretty good. But anyway, I was never call myself a foodie. So why do you feel like I think I know the answer, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. What drives someone to be a foodie versus what drives someone to not be a foodie? And is it drive or is it just their circumstances?
So it's multiple different things. So let's unpack it. First off, it can absolutely be drive. It's how exploratory are you? How important is food in your life? And are you eating to live or living to eat? And that's famous. I believe Benjamin Franklin in the question. And somebody who's definitely a foodie enjoys living to eat. And someone who is just trying to survive is eating to live. But that doesn't mean that if you're just surviving, doesn't mean that you can't broaden your horizons and understand the palates and try and look for different flavors, just like we were talking about with the ramen. That can apply to spam. If you take some spam, cut it up, fry it up, add a little soy sauce, a little brown sugar, you've now added sweet and salty and something really fun and magical in just cheap spam. It's all about playing with the flavors and developing your palate, even if that isn't something that drives you. Now, if you're a foodie, there's even foodies that they say I'm a foodie, but they usually still go in and order what they feel safe and comfortable with. It's really about identifying and exploring. And so it
There's
just
probably
depends
different
on.
levels of foodies then.
Absolutely. It's just like anything else. It's how open you are and receptive you are to trying something new.
Fantastic. So yeah, for those that are not foodies, and maybe we'll call them picky eaters. I know we touched on
Yeah.
this a little bit. Unpack that a little bit. And what advice do you have for picky eaters? And there's always more to it than I just don't like the texture, right? There's probably
Oh,
more to it.
so even if you don't like the texture, it's trying to, again, go through and figure out why you don't like the texture. Is it because it's slimy and you just don't like slimy foods? I always say this, can you close your eyes, work through the texture to really try and focus on the flavor? Because if you can work through the texture and focus on the flavor, then you've overcome that thing that makes your mouth uncomfortable. The same goes for hearing. And so when it comes to picky eaters, I would say you never want to jump full-fledged into something because that always ends in disaster. But the first thing is having some introspection to see why you make your food choices that you make, and then maybe taking a baby step, a little step here to try. So for example, if you go and get your favorite burger joint, you get a burger, right? And you get fries, nothing else. Maybe look at the kids menu and see if there's something different on the kids menu that is relatively cheap, that is a smaller sample, that's something different, to see if you might like it, to get to the might like it. That's something that I do recommend these days. I think also just trying an appetizer, just closing your eyes, trying one, and just go for it and realize it's going to be okay, because a lot of times this is associated with money. There's an old phrase that I'm very fond of. And this is something that's happening in Oklahoma, because Oklahoma is going through a culinary renaissance right now. But for years, it's Oklahomans want what they think of as Michelin quality food at Golden Corral portions for Applebee prices. And so what we need to do is find a balance between each one of those little extremes. And that's what a picky eater is trying to, especially when you go out, work past those phobias by starting small, aim small, miss small.
That's great advice. And I think that makes a lot of sense to me. You talk about the senses. And
Mm-hmm.
even you were talking, as you were mentioning that, again, I'm thinking probably the first thing, in your opinion, what's the first sense that is activated as you walk in the door of a restaurant?
So a lot of people are going to say right off the bat is going to be vision. And this is why I say it's flexibility. So for me, I was just in, and it also depends on how severe the sense is activated. So I was in a restaurant recently where I walked in and the first thing I realized, oh, this is cold. So even though I saw first, I noticed the temperature, the touch. Another restaurant, oh my goodness, this is loud. Another restaurant, oh my, this is bright. Another restaurant, oh, something smelled incredible. So it just depends. But being aware of that, that sets the tone. And especially if you take something as a negative or your body has a response. So if you go in and you don't generally enjoy loud, right? And you're going to this new restaurant, you walk in, it's loud, it's triggered your anxiety. It's busy going on, it might be cramped, the noise, your anxiety is triggered and starts to rise. These chemicals, anxiety, depression, overcome all of these things. They don't change your taste buds, but they dull the senses. They impact another sense. Because your mind is now focused on that uncomfortableness that is being created by the hearing or the seeing or the feel. And so what happens is you're already predisposed to not enjoy the restaurant or the food. So it depends on what sense is being triggered and how that interacts in your brain at the time. The key, though, is anxiety is not generally a good thing. There is good things for anxiety because that also protects us from danger. But if it stops you from enjoying new experiences, it's not necessarily a good thing, because then you're going to feel back, I'm not going to go back, I'm not going to get safe. But if you could overcome that anxiety, enjoy your experience, and be comfortable around there, that's just broadening your horizons.
Oh, that's fantastic. We talked about earlier, my audience is predominantly business people, technology consultant folks, and we do a lot of dinner meetings, and steakhouses and everything. As you're talking, I'm just like registering these memories of, God, this is so loud. I don't know why we're here. I can't even talk to someone right across the table, or even the smell. To me, I think maybe this is conditioned from my wife, because my wife has like this nose that smells everything. When I walk into a restaurant and I smell cleaner, where they clean off the table. If I smell chemicals first, it turns me off. It sets the mood. I'm like, I know it's clean, but I'm not here to drink a bottle of Dawn soap. I want to eat food. I want to smell food when I walk in.
Correct. Yes.
But so unpack that a little bit about the dinner meetings. I thought your observations there, if you're trying to have an effective business meeting, things to consider.
This is something that I recently, and I've had 2 conversations with people, and this is something that I really want to expand on my website. I'm even talking about doing consultation services, because this is something that isn't really talked about. Now, I'm sure maybe some billion-dollar industries will absolutely do this, but a lot of times whenever we deal and trying to make a lot of deals and a lot of things happen around food. And so if you've got that big business deal where you're trying to land a client or impress a client, a lot of times we'll take them to what we think is good, what we think that is the essence of the deal. And I try and look at it through the psychological aspect and taking those 5 senses. Who am I trying to appeal to? All right, that client. Is the client bringing their wife or their spouse? Okay, what is their food preferences? What type of atmosphere do they like? What if they're a vegetarian and I'm going to take them to the steakhouse because the steakhouse is the proverbial best in town? What if they appreciate farm to table? What if they appreciate seafood? And you can, as you're getting to know them, and say, oh, what do you like to do? When you go out, what type of restaurant you like? And as soon as you know that, maybe we'd like to have a nice, calm, and serene. The last thing you want to do is take them to a loud steakhouse, because some of those steakhouses can be pretty loud and busy. And so working with the client to try and learn their little eccentricities, to then apply that to seal that $1 million deal and take them to a curated place that they feel comfortable, where you listened, valued, and learned them on a different, more passionate level, rather than it being about you.
Yeah, that's great. I know the next time I plan a dinner, I thought I have a little bit of a hearing loss thing, so I'm very sensitive to loud places. Because I get if you're going to a dinner meeting, you hope to have a conversation, but I want to factor in all the others, and of course asking my guests, what's your preference? What do you like? Is there any place you really are interested in? So that good tips there. Another, again, I feel like we're jumping all over the place, but the common denominator is always going to be food here. On your website, I noticed you had your weight loss journey, and you mentioned this amazing feat of losing 176 pounds. And again, that was a tough year for you. I can imagine losing a father. That's just tough. Was that a catalyst for that, or was it just you just decided? Take us back to that time where you began that journey, and what did that journey look like? Hopefully, if anyone else listening that's on that journey and maybe they're struggling, hopefully could find some inspiration from.
There was a couple of catalysts. First, I lost my father, and he was my world at that time. I've lived in Oklahoma for 26 years. I have an aunt that I'm very close to that lives near me, and she is my father's sister, or was my father's, or she's still alive. My father was her brother. And I just woke up one day because he was always worried about my weight. And I affectionately called him the pie fiend, even though he was never really truly obese or anything like that.
In your
Despite,
book, you talk about it. I did read
yeah.
that. I thought that was a
And
funny
so,
story. Yeah.
and so when I looked down one day when I was going to the bathroom, I couldn't see my feet. I couldn't see my feet. Stomach was covering my feet. And I realized in that moment I needed to change and I needed to go about it. I needed to overcome and just find the strength within myself to do it. And that's how it started. And it was a very scientific formula because that's how my mind works. And so, how it really came about was researching effective weight loss. And there's a lot of noise. And I even talk about this. You're overwhelmed. If you Google weight loss, you're going to be bombarded with everything. This pill for that, Ozempic, bariatric surgery, all of these things work to a degree because they're all restricting calories. Ozempic, for example, it's an appetite suppressant. That's what it's doing. It's telling you're full. It's slowing the process of digesting food. Ultimately, one of the most effective weight losses at the time was Slim Fast. Why? Because Slim Fast had X amount of calories. You only drink 3 cans and that's it. Why it's not effective is when you get off Slim Fast, you go back to eating calories. It's your body's a battery to an extent. Any calorie you eat is energy. A calorie is just energy. And you're either going to use it after you eat it or the body's going to store it. And the body loves storing energy. It loves right around the middle. And it's very simple. If you burn more calories than you eat, you will lose weight. If you eat more calories than you burn, you will gain weight. Now, this doesn't take into consideration thyroid conditions or conditions that are medical that require treatment, because there are those. This is, I would say, for 80% of the population. So the first thing is discovering what your basal metabolic rate is. And that's calculated. There's M9 calculators. Your age, your height, your weight, and your gender or your sex, to be more specific. And as soon as you figure that out, it'll probably spit back maybe between, if you're a female, 1,700 calories, if you're male, 2,000 calories. Let's just go with 2,000 for this example. That means each day, if I do nothing all day long, I should burn 2,000 calories. So I have to put my body in a calorie deficit. That means I should only eat 1,500 calories that whole day, all day long. If I do that for 7 days, I should lose 1 pound of fat. And that is the formula. If you want to do things to augment or enhance it, if you exercise, if you burn 500 calories of exercise, you could lose 2 pounds of fat. And so that is the formula. In order to properly monitor it, you have to get a scale and you have to measure to the gram how many calories you eat, and then figure out what you want in your diet, because at 1,500 calories is not a lot. So you're not full and you're not miserable. And you also realize that even if you are hungry afterwards, it's okay. You can have your calories tomorrow. And so there's a lot going on.
Yeah. Wow. Drinking water. People all the time say, if you're hungry, just drink a glass of water to fill your stomach up. And what is there any science to that? Or is that just more a placebo effect of helping you feel like you're doing something?
No, because the body processes water a little differently than it processes food. It's also a psychological thing. The body knows you're full from drinking, and you're just going to get back to being hungry a little bit more. So some tricks and tips that I do is you need to figure out the satiety index. And that is, what are foods that are low calorie density? For example, if you eat a pound of potatoes, it's only 400 calories, and you're going to feel pretty full in that pound of potatoes. If you eat a pound of pasta, well, that's a little different story. That is 600 calories. I'm sorry, 800 calories, and you're not going to feel as full. So it's all about how dense the calories are in the food. You also have to realize is your body's doesn't like being in a calorie deficit. It's going to do everything it can to hold on to those calories. So as you lose weight, your basal metabolic rate adjusts. So, and that's what happens is you plateau. You might do well for a month and the body is caught up to it and said, you've lost the weight. Okay, we're now at what's equilibrium. You're not going to lose anymore. So you have to either increase your exercise or restrict your calorie intake even more to get to that ideal weight.
Again, heavy information, a lot to process. I want to get back to the book and get back to food critiques. Do you use Yelp?
I do use Yelp. I'm a Yelp elite.
I was hoping so. I meant that. So you take your reviews and critiques very seriously on Yelp. I'm sure everyone. I'm gonna look you up. Is it easy to find you on Yelp? I can follow you on Yelp, I imagine.
I hope so. Let me check, but this is the
I'll
reason
look
why
in.
I get on Yelp, and I also do my reviews on Google, even though I don't think I have as big a platform there, and clearly I don't, is because those reviews are really quick, easy, dirty, and I don't think are fair, accurate representations of restaurants necessarily. For example, in Tulsa, we have an Italian restaurant that is simply incredible called Il Sime, and that is run by James Beard nominated chef Jordan Hawley. It's owned by a James Beard nominated chef, Lisa Beckland, and they make incredible from scratch Italian food using fresh ingredients. On Google, that score is at, I think, a 4.6, right? If you Google Italian restaurants, 4.6. Olive Garden is a 4.3. Olive Garden is not in the same league as these people, but the Google algorithm, based on its appeal and how many people go to Olive Garden, says it is. And yet that is the issue, I think, with Google and Yelp is it's a platform for people to complain. I saw a review on Yelp for a restaurant I love, 1 star, it was closed. Now somebody gave 2 stars, there was poor parking. How is that the restaurant's fault? Especially if it's a downtown location. So
Right.
that's why if you see a review by me on Yelp, I really try and make sure that it is in depth and well thought out, because I'm respecting the restaurant and I'm respecting the reader. Because anytime I give a recommendation, if somebody asks me what restaurant, my reviews are one thing, but if you ask me what restaurant I go to, I don't like to generally say, unless I'm confident that I think I'm going to send that person to a high quality that's going to nail what they want, because I'm never going to say what is my favorite. I'm going to ask what they think their favorite is, because what's my favorite is irrelevant. It's really more about them and where they want to eat.
So are you that friend that people are always asking then, hey, what I got some people coming to town. What do you recommend we go? Do you get asked that a lot then?
Sometimes I do. It just really just depends. And yeah, it just depends on if they want to or not. Some people don't put much thought into it. On my website, I'm working on a little functionality where somebody can go on there and fill out a little 5 question questionnaire, and it'll match them with a restaurant for what they want. Think dating application for restaurants.
Oh, you
And
might be onto something there.
I might be
That's
onto something. We Google will steal it. Send me a clip saying it, because this idea is mine, but still, I wish I could sell it to Yelp or Google. I
who
think
says you
they'd make it.
can't? I get a great idea there. And when you think about not even for restaurants that might be struggling, because we all drive around in our towns and you always see that one location at an
Mm-hmm.
intersection that every 12 to 18 months it's a different restaurant. Like, well,
Mm-hmm.
guys, it seems like a good race. It seems like a good location, but they must be missing something. I know because I'm a big Yelp believer. I travel a lot, so I always find myself somewhere I've never been. And then I just, whatever mood of food I'm in, or obviously if I'm just tired and it's late and I just need to find something close to the hotel, that's very convenient. But I love the reviews, and it sometimes does concern me because yeah, I can easily weed out the okay, that's just not a fair review. But then you got to wonder. I hear about people maybe even paying for reviews, right? So then they're fake reviews to make it sound better than it is.
Oh,
Uh, it
there's
happens.
nothing that happens, and the people will do that. It's the way of things. That's a restaurant's more than welcome to cover my meal or pay to fly me out, but in the end, they're still going to get my honest critique.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Um,
integrity.
Yes, a very big thing. I love that topic as well, and I can tell you're very authentic, man. You can tell you believe in this. You've done your homework. You've lived it. You've experienced it, and I think I applaud you for sharing it. On the book, 18 chapters, a great read. I love the storytelling in it. Was there a favorite chapter out of the 18 that you just, if I had to pick one, what would be your favorite?
So I'm gonna have I do want to get to one is the weight loss, even though I didn't get too deep into it, because I think that resonates with a lot of people. But really, my favorite chapter was the preface, and the reason why it was the preface was because that got to describe my pie fiend father, and that
That's
was
right.
like, and it's really funny because the beginning of the book is about a preface about a memory and how that formed a relationship for food. And the last quote in the book in chapter 18 is about how food shapes our memories. So I try and bring it full circle. And so the preface is probably my favorite because it really encapsulates everything from portion control to good home cooking to everything, that the smells in the kitchen, everything's made. It really encapsulates everything we're going to be talking about in the book. Very short and sweet, and a nice, charming story.
So is it fair to say that's the table?
It sets the table.
I had to throw in a dad joke
That was a
there. I
good
love
one.
it.
It was a
Yeah,
good one.
you can use it. Yeah, I'm gonna set the table here. Wow, this has been great. I can't, as I told you, man, between family and life and business, work and all that, I've been so busy. I'm almost done with the book. I try to read these books before the interview, so yeah, I'm being overly honest with you, but I can't wait to get back to it. Like I said, this weekend
Thank
I got
you.
some downtime. My son, I was telling him about it, or I'll have the Amazon link in the show notes. I encourage. It's a very affordable book. It's very fairly priced, and the value you're going to get for it is probably underpriced in my opinion. But
Well, thank you.
it's such an important topic. Our health, not only
Yep.
our physical health, but our mental health, our
Yep.
relationship health. What's the common denominator? What we're putting in our mouth, and when and where, and what those experiences are like. So important. Let's wrap it up. Any last words? Is there anything we didn't hit on, Jared, that we need to talk about, or any thoughts you want to leave us with?
I think the biggest thing is that we all have struggles with food. We all have struggle and use food for different mechanisms. If we can just find strength in ourselves to use the food as a healthy outlet and appreciate more and expand our minds and use it to grow rather than as a coping mechanism, just imagine how powerful that would become, that this universal language, food is us. And if we can use that to expand and broaden our horizons, the sky's the limit. And it's just a wonderful thing to use something so wonderful to live, to eat, and eat to live. They work interchangeable. And then you can absolutely live to eat and eat to learn.
That's right. That's right. I think we're all on a journey. The same. If you're not
Mhm.
learning, you're dying, and it sounds harsh, but it's true. And you're not growing. You're stagnant. No one likes to be stagnant. Jared, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your work. Thank you for inspiring us to think more about the experience of eating and how it impacts our senses and our relationships. So again, such an important topic. So thank you so much for your time and putting this all together. And I can't wait to see where you take it.
Thank you so much. I do want to mention that you can buy the book on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course. You
Okay.
can do either, right? Amazon and Barnes and Noble.
Yep. Amazon
Yeah,
and Barnes and Noble,
yeah, because
ebook,
that's where I saw it
audiobook.
was Amazon. So I'll have the link definitely to Amazon in the show notes. I definitely encourage you guys to check it out. It's a great value for the topic, and buy it for that foodie in your life, or buy it for that picky eater in your life, that they can both learn from it. Awesome. But thanks again. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much, Chris. I appreciate it. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Excellent, excellent. And I appreciate you for listening and watching. So if you're listening on an audio only platform, don't forget, I do have a YouTube channel at Wireless Wit. You can check out these podcasts, the whole video, and see us. I got my favorite shirt on today, PMA. I got to go over here, positive mental attitude. And of course, red on Fridays. A lot of veterans know, remember everyone deployed, help brings it back. Great topic, great conversation. And as always, if this inspired you, motivated you, and educated you, share it with those that you love, share it with your friends, and of course, like and subscribe and follow. I'd really appreciate that. Have a great remainder of your day, and we'll catch you next time on The Wireless Way.